This is BBC Radio 2. We're celebrating 25 years of ZTT in a 3-CD ZTT box set, and with me, one of the founders, along with Trevor Horn and Jill Sinclair, Paul Morley. Pleasure to meet you, Paul. First of all, what did Zang Tum Tum mean? Absolutely nothing?
It meant a lot, actually. It had many, many meanings, of which I could go on at some length.
Something to do with an African... Tummy's an African rhythm.
No, originally it was an Italian futurist poet who'd come up with the idea of describing in words the sound of a machine gun. Zang Tum Tum. And I fancied the idea of calling a label that the ex-Buggle Trevor Horn had run, Zang Tum Tum, which would be unexpected, but also then did a slight twist and turned it into the sound of his drum sound, Zang Tum Tum. So at the time, when people asked me the question, I didn't draw in the Italian futurist and all those dodgy sort of elements of that in terms of where it led in Mussolini and everything. I said, it's the sound of Trevor Horn's drum. So Zang Tum Tum.
It changed day by day, month by month.
I had many, as you can imagine, many definitions of that.
If we try and define, because I was thinking about this coming in today, I was thinking, it was futuristic. Was it Britain's first kind of electronic label, do you think? How would we describe it?
No, because, many labels that had influenced me, and one of those labels was Mute. I would say Daniel Miller's Mute was very much the pioneering electronic label. For me, it was interesting because I was obviously inspired by a lot of indie labels like Mute, Factory Records, Fast up north, Postcard in Scotland, New Hormones in Manchester.
But it was none of those.
But that was my sensibility. But then mixing with Trevor, the ex-Buggle and the ex-Yes, it was a really peculiar hybrid because in one sense it was Trevor Horn's production company, but my role in a way was to disguise that and turn it into something that had the appearance and the sound of a kind of indie label. And somehow in that hybrid became this peculiar thing where I had my mad Factory Records catalogue hat on, and yet we were actually getting these records into the charts.
You couldn't get any further away from the factory ethic, though.
Well, no, but for me, that's what I was doing. I was setting up a label, a catalogue of, incidents that I never, when I first started thinking about it, it never occurred to me it would actually work. In your bedroom, you think, and the first record will go to #1, and it will stay there for 4 weeks, and you never think it will actually happen. And of course, it did actually happen, but to some extent, I went into it wanting to create, for the ex-member of Buggle, a really great, attractive, odd, peculiar, subversive indie label.
I think Factory always, to me, sounded like it was a happy accident. It was, obviously, prior to ZTT, and then you had kind of that experience to go and get these records right, which you did, and there was kind of beautifully polished. The production was amazing because Trevor is brilliant at doing that, isn't it?
It is interesting because Martin Hannett, one of the Factory Collective, of course, he wanted to spend their profits on a Fairlight computer, which indeed Trevor Horn had.
Right.
They, of course, spent their profits at Factory on the Hacienda Club, caused a fallout with Martin Hannett because he wanted to make these beautiful records. Martin Hannett was capable of making the records.
Well, he made Atmosphere, didn't he?
Exactly. Only two people in the world were making them at the time in the 82, 83, and one was Trevor Horn and one was Quincy Jones. And oddly enough, Martin Hannett was actually capable of making them, but he needed that machine.
So, let's play a bit of a record and we'll talk some more. Explain about Art of Noise, because it was essentially you and Trevor, and was Jill involved with Jill Sinclair?
No, it was originally me and Trevor, and it was the idea of having a house band.
Like the Funk Brothers.
Well, you're not wrong. I mean, this was the kind of label that I wanted to have. Wanted to have a label that had a house band and created the sound. And to an extent, the idea of the Art of Noise, they were the house band that made the Frankie sound. They were the house band that made all the sounds. And here they were, as an orchestra within the label, making their own records. So it was the idea of using the technicians that Trevor Horn used to make these records, the Fairlight computer operator, the engineer, all of them being really important, and then creating the idea of an image of a group, which was my job, so that we had 5 people in the group, each had a very distinct role, of which mine was to name the group, package the group, and indeed invent what the group was, as if it was a kind of really weird avant-garde...
Conveyor belt.
Avant-garde pop band, almost bubblegum, but avant-garde. So obviously, as you can tell, we're having a lot of fun with all these kind of theories. And the idea was, again, to see if we could follow up Trevor Horn's Buggle, who were a kind of novelty band, with something so mysterious that you couldn't believe that Trevor Horn was involved. So for a while, people thought the Art of Noise came from Berlin or Detroit, and to me that was...
I probably did.
Well, to me, perversely, that was a success. That here I had disguised the man who was having #1 hit records so successfully that he became really, really obscure for a moment.
Let's play Art of Noise and Moments in Love. We'll be back with Paul Morley.